Today, we're going to have ourselves a good old-fashioned Macintosh clone-off. Now, you might say, what the heck is a Macintosh clone-off? It sounds like you just made that up. And I did. But it's going to be awesome, because we have these two beautiful 90s Macintosh clones, the Power Computing PowerWave 604 and the UMac SuperMac S900. Both came out around the same time based on the same architecture with almost an identical upgrade path, which got me thinking, if we install these same upgrades and accelerators in both machines, they should both come out to be exactly as fast as one another. But is that really the case? So today, let's upgrade each of these originally PowerPC 604 machines with one of the world's rarest 1 GHz G4 upgrades, 1 GB of RAM, and SATA SSDs, and see if they really do run both exactly as fast. And then we'll pick one of these beautiful beige monsters to bring with us to exhibit at this year's VCF East. So stay tuned. And if you enjoy head-to-head death matches between obscure 90s beige behemoths, I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. There's a ton of cool stuff in the works, including that trip to VCF East, where I'll have a bunch of these machines on display, so it's definitely worth sticking around. So I won't go into too much detail in this video about the history of 90s Macintosh clones, but if you're interested to learn more, check out the other videos in this series, which I'll link right here. And I'll also put some interesting resources down in the description. But long story short, Apple was nearly bankrupt in the mid-90s, and in a desperate bid to increase their dwindling market share, they actually let third-party companies build their own official Macintoshes.
Oh gosh.
Something completely unthinkable from Apple today. This backfired, and Apple began losing even more sales on the high end to the clone makers. So the machines that came out during this period are as rare as they are interesting and powerful. And these two towers here are two of my favorites, and honestly two of the best Macs ever built in the 90s. Both are based on the Tsunami architecture, similar to the PowerMac 9500. This architecture supported PCI, PowerPC upgrades, tons of RAM, and really extreme upgradability. Power Computing, based in Austin, Texas, released the PowerWave in 1995. It ran a PowerPC 604 processor between 120 and 150 MHz with 16 megs of RAM. UMac, based in Taiwan, released the S900 in 1996. It used a newer revision of the PowerPC 604, the 604E, and it also doubled the RAM from the PowerWave to 32 megs. Despite being built on the same architecture, there were a few differences in implementation. The Power Computing had some really interesting options, including supporting both NuBus and PCI in the same machine. But the UMac was slightly newer and included more PCI slots and more drive bays. It also had the extremely interesting option of dual 604E processors using a special proprietary processor card and linking cable, which is almost impossible to find today. But having the same underlying architecture means that the similarities vastly outweigh the differences. They both have a 50 MHz bus, they both support SCSI 2, they both take the same RAM, and crucially, they both take the same processor daughter cards, meaning that any upgrade that works in one should work in the other. So what we're going to do is test one machine completely maxed out, check the benchmarks and play some games, and then we're going to swap all of the upgrades over to the other machine and do the same. And we'll see if both machines really do perform exactly the same with all things being equal, or if one of these machines has an edge. So which one are you rooting for? Let me know in the comments below which you think will win. My hometown hero, the US-built Power Computing, or the international contender, the slightly newer UMac SuperMac. And speaking of international contenders, let's give a quick thanks to the sponsor of today's video, PCBWay, an international favorite for PCB prototyping and production, as well as PCB assembly, high-quality 3D printing, and even custom CNC machining. And now they have brand new options for advanced PCBs, including some pretty awesome colors, which, as you know, is pretty important to me. So check out the link in the description below, and now, back to the clones. And if you've been around the channel for a long time, you might be thinking, wait, wasn't this UMAX totally dead? Well, I'm happy to report that I've fixed it through the cunning use of taking out this one video card, which I guess is broken, but now this thing works great. So let's start with the power computing, since we've already upgraded it with every conceivable upgrade. It has that 1 GHz Sonnet G4 processor with 2 megs of cache, a PCI SATA controller card that's booting the machine from a 120 gig SSD into macOS 10.4.11 Tiger, a Radeon 9200 video card with 128 megs of VRAM, and a SCSI to SD with macOS 9 as our safety drive. If for some reason the machine doesn't boot from the SSD, we can boot into the SD card and run X post facto to get back into the SSD. So we'll boot this up, run some benchmarks, play a couple games, and then swap all these upgrades into the UMAX and see how it compares. That's a heavy Trinitron. Okay, let's take some nice, fresh Geekbench 2.2 benchmarks on the power computing here with our lovely 1 GHz G4. All right, we've got a nice, respectable 434 score, so yeah, that's pretty good. Let's save it as PowerWave G4. Right on the desktop. And now let's try a few games, and as many of you pointed out in the last couple videos, I completely forgot to test Unreal Tournament 2003 after we did all these upgrades, so let's right that wrong and use that as our first game of comparison. Alright, we're running here in 640 by 480, and all of our video settings should be as low as possible, so 16-bit color, all the details turned down to their lowest settings. So let's see what it's like. We'll use my profile here of Blorp and do the one-on-one. Simple, flat, and chock full of weapons and ammo. And I am terrible at this game, by the way. Shooters were never my forte. Alright, well, it works. Ooh, the frame rate is not great. Alright, match beginning now. Well, hey, I'm winning. Yeah, I am terrible at this game and all first-person shooters, and this bit of a slideshow isn't helping. I expected this to be a little bit better. So, let's do a tilde and stat FPS. And, yeah, frame rate, not great. Averaging 10, 11. Oh, now we're dipping into 9s. Yeah, frame rate is pretty terrible, even at absolute lowest settings, but it does work. We're playing. Alright, let's try another game, and I think you know what we're going to try next. That's right, we're doing the G4 optimized version of Minecraft, version 1.2.5, and we're going to do multiplayer on the Action MC server, which is great because the very nice people on the Action Retro Discord have built a whole new spawn area, which is much more friendly on old G4 and PowerPC computers. And if we hit F3 to pull up our stats, we can say our FPS, and we're pulling Unreal Tournament numbers here in the single digits, but still playable. I can still run around, I can sprint, I can fly, and as we get further away from stuff, the frame rate goes up. So now we're up in the sky and now we're in the double digits. Look, we're hitting in the 20s. And a number of you have commented that it's silly to try to play these modern games like Minecraft on a computer from 1995, and I should stick to period games. And while I see your point, it just strikes me so funny to be able to play multiplayer Minecraft on a server on this 1995 machine. So it's definitely one of my favorite things to do with vintage computers if they're even remotely capable of it. All right, so we have a good baseline of what this power computing can do. So why don't we tear this thing apart, take all the upgrades out, and throw them into the UMax SuperMac. So both of these machines are wonderfully simple to crack into, although the SuperMac is a little bit easier by a very slim margin. There's a thumb screw on the back, but on the SuperMac, that thumb screw is actually captive. A very nice touch. And then on the power computing, the entire case lifts straight off, giving us access to our incredibly upgraded internals. Whereas on the SuperMac, the side panel comes off, but the rest of the case stays in place. And honestly, I like that better for exhibiting at VCF East because we can have this side panel just off of the machine, but it won't look like a completely bare ATX tower like the power computing does. Although, I do love the power computing for exactly that reason. It looks like a mid-90s plain Jane PC that hides a super special computer on the inside. Now, in order to access the PCI cards and get the processor out of this machine, we have to lay it down because it does have a bit of a party trick for disassembly. The bottom of the case actually comes off with two screws. So now we can just take everything out of here. So I'll put the original video card back in here and also this G3 500 Sonnet, which we were playing with a little bit before. So here is our big wonderful pile of PCI Power Mac upgrades. We have our GeForce 9200 with 128 megs of VRAM, a pretty good step up from the standard 2 or 4 megs of VRAM that these machines originally had. We have our SCSI to SD, of course, and a custom printed bracket. Though for the SuperMac, I think we're going to go back to the 3¼ inch front drive bay bracket since we have so many more PCI slots to work with. And of course, the star of the show right here, the 1 gigahertz Sonic Crescendo G4 with 2 megs of cache. We also have our PCI SATA controller card, the SATA SSD that we're using with it, which is this nice ADATA 120 gigabyte SSD in this nice quick release mounting bracket, which we'll see if we have a free PCI slot to put this over. If not, we'll just mount the SSD in the case. And of course, we have our 1 gig huge pile of 128 megabyte RAM sticks, including, of course, these hilarious jumbo sticks that originally came in the UMax and many of you on Twitter found absolutely hilarious. So let's get all of this cool stuff into the SuperMac. Okay, so the SuperMac already has a Sonnet nice purple Firewire USB combo card and what I believe is a 100 base T network card up from the original 10 base T that this machine came with. And this card here is the video card, which we'll be removing right now. So I think we're still going to have one open PCI slot in this monster. Okay, I've got all the PCI stuff installed. I have our SATA controller card above our SSD quick release so that I can more easily reach the connectors, and actually let's hook that up to power as well with this Molex adapter. And we have our Sonnet PCI Firewire USB card, our video card, and our nice networking card. And we have one free PCI slot. And I think we're going to use that in a future video for this card, which I have teased in the past. And if you recognize this card, let me know in the comments below what this is, because it's super exciting. Okay, now I want to mount our SCSI to SD in this lovely front panel here, since we have these nice 2 small drive bays here. And this computer comes with that SCSI DVD-ROM. So that's pretty sweet. We have a DVD-ROM ready to go. But in order to get to that stuff, we have to pop the whole front of the case off with all these little tabs, which actually isn't really that difficult. Although I'm always worried about these brittle plastic hooks here, which actually already have some wear to the edge of them. So yeah, not ideal. But now we can take off this whole drive apparatus with a single screw. And I had to put it on this super bright yellow microfiber cloth because I keep scratching the heck out of my brand new desk. But anyway, this is pretty easy to mount stuff into. These blanks actually have these nice latches. And there's this little spacer guy in here. Yeah, wow, I'm surprised that did not cut me. Jeez. So this has a bunch of markings here so that we can mount our SCSI to SD and have it nice and secure. There we go. Okay, now let's do the RAM and the processor card. So right now I just have all the random sticks that I had laying around the house in here, which I don't even know how much RAM this is. And finally, we have the infamous dual processor slots, the top one being marked CPU and the bottom one being marked ASPD. And unfortunately, you can't just stick 2 CPUs in here. The second one has to be a special card made by UMax, which has a socket at the top. And I think you even need a special regular CPU card because they need to be joined with that special linking cable in order for it to be a dual processor machine. If I just stuck another random processor in here like the G3 upgrade, I don't think anything would happen, although I'm not going to try. But let's stick our 1 gigahertz CPU in here. And I think it's good to go. Just look at this beautiful purple beast. And of course we can't use the power computing keyboard on the Super Mac because that just wouldn't be right. So we'll have to bring in the Super Mac keyboard and mouse, which is exactly the same keyboard and mouse, just with different branding on it. And also quite a bit yellower. If I'm going to bring this to VCF, I should probably retrobrite it. Okay, here we are back together and plugged in. Let's see if it boots. It chimed. That's a good sign. I have encountered issues. You know, it seems to be a bit of a common thread in many of these videos and projects where I start out confidently saying, hey, this thing would be cool. This should totally work. Then, as is wont to happen with 30-year-old tech, thing does not work, often for no discernible reason. Such, it seems, is the case today, because on paper, the UMax S900 should be able to take all of these same upgrades that the power computing can take, but in practice, this UMax is a fickle beast. So I'll spare you the 2 days of tinkering that has elapsed between the last shot and this shot, and instead give you a rundown of where we're at and what's going on with this machine. So the UMAX boots just fine when you use either the 604 processor card or the G3 processor card that actually I found this machine with, and one of these original terrible 8 megabyte video cards. Boots just fine. But if I try to use the Sonic Crescendo 1 gigahertz or the Radeon 9200, then it gives me all sorts of weird problems, ranging from no picture on the screen at all to super funky colors like this. And honestly, I have no idea why. I mean, this should work. It's the same architecture as the power computing, but for some reason, this thing just does not fly in this machine. And originally I thought maybe it was a problem with the PCI slots in here. So I hit it up with our friend Deoxit on all of the slots inside the machine. So then I was digging around in the stuff that came with this machine, which included a big box marked S900 UMAX. And in that box was a whole new motherboard. So I thought, hey, maybe the original owner of this machine knew that the PCI slots were bad and included this new motherboard that they just haven't swapped in yet. So I daisy chained that motherboard, and the power supply is sitting over here, and I tried to boot it up with the cards, and lo and behold, same exact effect. Down to the funky colors on the screen occasionally. So yeah, it just does not like this processor card. So I think what I'm going to do here is put the UMAX back together with the G3 processor and have this as a slower machine but still stable, and put all of the best upgrades into the power computing. Well, power computing, I am sorry that I ever doubted you. The UMAX SuperMac was simply no challenge for your superior compatibility in running all of these upgrades at the same time. As beautiful as this SuperMac is, the best it managed is the G3 500 Sonnet, which is still pretty cool, but doesn't hold a candle to this power computing. So I think there's one thing left to do, and that is to affix the official Powered by Sonnet Simply Fast sticker to the Victor. And I actually like it right there because it doesn't interfere with this whole cool design where the power computing logo is. But yeah, it's this power computing that will take the center stage as the most upgraded clone at VCF East and probably in the entire world. But I think I'm going to bring both of these machines because they're both super cool in their own right, and they're both very modified Macs at this point. And you know, I think we've learned something today, or at least we've been reminded of something very important, and that's working with these very old computers and these very rare, hard to find, and sometimes incredibly expensive upgrades. Who knows if they're going to work? The compatibility was probably shoddy even back when all this stuff was brand new. And if I had got that 1 gigahertz upgrade and I only had this SuperMac to put it into, I might well have thought it was just plain broken and I'm not able to fix it. But since I'm lucky enough to have both of these two machines that card fits into, I know that the card is just fine and works perfectly, at least now that I resoldered that one broken solder joint, and it's rock solid stable in this power wave. But that'll do it for this video. Even though we didn't get the comparison in stats that we were looking for, and even though we aren't able to play Minecraft on the lowly G3, I think we still got some excellent results, and we now have, again, the world's most powerful Macintosh clone. So if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more clone Macintosh shenanigans like this, please subscribe down below, and thank you very much for watching. And a special thanks to Chris, Algreta, Tom, Stig124, Justin D. Morgan, Greg Hrutke, Chris Calderon, and Nick Hamsey, who are my highest tiered patrons, and all of my Patreon supporters who help to make these videos possible.